Hi, I'm Lazaro. I cooked for my family every Christmas, and while my brother gave speeches, they told the world I was a disgrace, but I was the one holding everything together. Last holiday, they left me off the guest list. Again. And when I finally stood up for myself, my mother screamed I was humiliating them. My father laughed in my face. CEO, you're just a taxi driver. That night, I left, walked out with nothing but my suitcase and a $9 million deal waiting in Miami. Now, the same CEO they worshipped calls me boss. And my brother? He lost his 600K contract in front of them all. But here's what no one saw coming. When I came back, I wasn't looking for revenge. I came to return something they broke years ago, something they thought I still needed. Want to know what it was? The wind cut through my coat as I stepped out of the car. The December chill had a way of reminding you where you stood, especially in Greenwich. My parents' house stood like a polished museum, all perfect hedges and frosted windows glowing warm yellow. From the outside, it looked like the kind of home you'd expect to smell like cinnamon and hear laughter from. But I knew better. Inside, voices floated from the dining room. I heard clinking glasses, laughter, the kind that followed a joke you probably didn't want to be the punchline of. I took a breath, straightened my tie, and walked in. My mother saw me first. "Oh, finally," she said, waving her manicured hand. "Lazaro's here." My father didn't even look up as he poured himself another whiskey, but then he said it, like he'd been waiting just for the moment I stepped over the threshold. "CEO, you're just a taxi driver." The room paused, a beat too long. Then came the polite chuckles, those uncomfortable laughs from people who didn't want to be rude but didn't want to miss the joke either. I smiled, tight. "Nice to see you too, Dad." "Don't humiliate this family in front of our guests," my mother hissed as she leaned in to kiss my cheek, her voice sugar-coated with rage. "Not tonight." Marcus, my older brother, stood tall beside her, drink in hand, looking like he'd walked off a billboard for successful sons. He didn't say anything, just nodded at me like I was the waiter bringing more bread. We moved into the living room where the fire was lit, stockings hung in perfect symmetry. The extended family was already there, cousins, aunts, that one uncle who always asked too many personal questions. I barely had time to set my coat down before my father clinked his glass for attention. "Everyone," he announced, "Marcus just landed a $600,000 PR deal. Cheers to our rising star." Cheers echoed. Eyes turned to me, and then he said it. "And here's our youngest," he smiled. "Still trying to find his way, sometimes drives taxis, but he's got heart." Laughter. Real this time. Even the kids giggled. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I said nothing. I just nodded and sat down. Then he walked over, handed me something small. "You'll need this," he smirked. It was a pocket watch. Old, cracked, and ugly. "So you can at least tell time while driving your cab." I held it in my palm. Cold, heavy. I slipped it into my pocket without a word. Dinner passed in a blur. Marcus told stories. People listened. I served wine, poured water, smiled politely, just like every Christmas. I played the helper, the ghost, the one no one remembered until something needed fixing. Later, while clearing plates, I found myself alone in the kitchen. My mother stormed in, heels clicking like accusations. "Tomorrow," she snapped, "Marcus has 35 VIP guests coming. You'll cook, serve, clean, no mistakes." "I have a flight tomorrow. Business." She scoffed. "What business? Don't start your fantasies again." "I have clients in Miami. You're not leaving." "Do not embarrass us, Lazaro." "Not again." I opened my mouth, closed it. She left. Just like that. Upstairs, I shut the guest room door, locked it, sat on the bed, pulled out my laptop. The screen lit up with the draft contract. $9 million. A deal I'd been working on for 2 years. I was supposed to be on a plane at 7 a.m. If I stayed, I'd lose it all. If I left, I'd ruin the one thing they cared about, Marcus's big day. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the watch, ran my thumb over the crack down the middle. They think I'm nothing, a servant, a failure. But they've never asked what I've built. Who I've become. They'll find out. Tomorrow. The clock on the guest room nightstand blinked 2:41 a.m., but it could have been any time. The hours blurred together in that dim, silent box of a room. The only sound was the hum of the heater and the occasional thud from the old plumbing, like the house itself was grumbling in its sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open in front of me. The email from my assistant was still there, bold and clear. Flight confirmed, Miami, 9 a.m. Conference room B, Vercelli Tower. Bring final contract draft. Client is ready to sign. $9 million. 9 million real reasons not to serve shrimp cocktail for a brother who hadn't spoken my name without a smirk since college. But I couldn't stop hearing my father's voice in my head. That condescending chuckle. Taxi driver. Like that one insult summed up everything I was worth. Like it was a joke that had written itself and he'd been waiting years to deliver the punchline. I stared at the screen, then closed the laptop. My hands rested in my lap for a long time before I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the old pocket watch he'd handed me earlier. It was heavier than it looked, cracked down the middle, still ticking. I remembered the first time I ever saw that watch. He used to flash it around when I was a kid, showing off to dinner guests like it was some kind of family heirloom. Swiss craftsmanship, he'd say. Built to last. He never let me touch it. Now he handed it to me like I was some valet who'd overstayed his shift. I leaned back on the headboard, let my head fall against the wood, and closed my eyes. Then it hit me. Another memory. 3 years ago. Thanksgiving. We were all here. Same house. Same perfectly arranged centerpieces on the dining table. My father had just finished pouring drinks when he raised his glass and called for silence. To Marcus, he said. The pride of this family. Overseeing the biggest PR launch on the East Coast. Applause. Toasts. Even the kids clapped. Then he looked at me and said, Lazaro, be a dear and help park the cars. I did it. I actually walked out into the cold and moved 3 Lexus SUVs and 1 minivan. And when I came back inside, one of the guests handed me her coat. She thought I worked there. No one corrected her. Not one person. I opened my eyes again, still holding the pocket watch. My phone buzzed. It was late, but I expected it to be spam or some automated alert. It wasn't. It was a calendar ping. Reminder, tomorrow, Pinnacle CEO arrives 11 a.m., 35 VIPs. Marcus's career on the line. Of course, my mother had this whole day choreographed like a Broadway show, and I was just another background prop in her set. There was a knock at the door, 2 soft taps. Then, Lazaro, it's me. I didn't answer, but the door creaked open anyway. My mother stepped in, robe tied neatly, makeup still perfect, as if she had only stepped away from a photo shoot, not her bed. You're not seriously still working on that nonsense? She said, eyeing the laptop. It's not nonsense. Lazaro. She said my name like it was a mistake on a receipt. Let's be realistic. Marcus has Pinnacle's CEO coming. This deal could change everything for him. I sat up. I know what's at stake, for him. But I have a meeting too, in Miami. Real clients, real contract. She waved a hand, dismissive. You mean that fantasy app of yours? The one where people book, what was it, cars? Luxury transport logistics. She sighed dramatically like she'd heard a child say they wanted to be an astronaut. We need you here. Marcus needs you. Don't embarrass this family. Again. Again? She stepped closer, her tone sharper. We've invited you into this home. Don't push your luck. You're lucky we still include you in things like this. I'm your son. And Marcus is the one people talk about. I stood up, chest tight. I have a meeting, Mom. Tomorrow. I'm going. Stop lying to yourself, she snapped. You can't even commit to Thanksgiving without walking out early. You think anyone believes you run a company? I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because part of me, some broken piece still trying to earn their approval, wanted to cancel the flight and just play along one more time. She turned on her heel and left the room without a word. I stared at the door for a long time. Then I picked up my phone, opened the airline app. My thumb hovered over the cancel flight button. Maybe keeping the peace was more important. Maybe showing up for my brother would make them finally see me. Maybe being silent was better than being resented. I don't know how long I sat like that. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Eva, my assistant. Miami, 9 a.m., 9 on the contract. Don't be late. They need you, the CEO. Not the helper, not the disappointment, not the servant. I set the phone down, closed my eyes, breathed in deep. Not this time. Yes, I left the phone on the nightstand and stayed still for a while, eyes open in the dark. The words, "not this time," echoed in my mind like a vow scratched into stone. Eventually, sleep came. Not rest, not peace, just enough to knock the edge off my nerves. By the time I stirred, the sun hadn't fully broken through the clouded sky, but the house was already wide awake. Clinking dishes, voices rising from the kitchen, footsteps moving quickly over the hardwood floors. Then I heard it. Lazaro will handle it. It wasn't a question, it wasn't a suggestion, just a statement tossed into the morning air like it was obvious. I sat up. My shoulders were stiff from how I'd slept, partly curled over the edge of the bed like I was bracing for impact. Footsteps passed outside my door. A woman's voice, one of the cousins, maybe. "He's still here, right? I mean, he usually does all this?" Another voice, lower. "Well, he's not doing anything else, is he?" I didn't bother responding. I just stood, stretched, and made my way to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked older this morning. Not tired, done, like a man who'd been running the same lap for 30 years and finally realized he was on a treadmill. By the time I made it downstairs, the house was buzzing. My mother was already in full event host mode, barking instructions while clutching a clipboard. My father was at the dining table, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He didn't even glance up when I walked by. "Lazaro," my mother called without looking. "Make sure the cars are cleaned and warm before guests arrive, and double-check the kitchen. The caterers need help setting up." No, good morning, no please, just commands, like always. I stayed quiet. As I crossed the hallway, a memory hit me, hard and fast, like stepping on black ice. I was 16, it was Thanksgiving. My first time bringing a friend home from school. The turkey burned that year. My father had been drinking, forgot it was in the oven. Smoke alarms blared, everyone panicked. And then someone asked, who was supposed to be watching it? My mother pointed at me. Lazaro was in charge of the timer. I wasn't, but no one cared. My father turned red and muttered, "He's careless. He never gets anything right." That stuck. The next morning, I heard my uncle joke to someone, "Well, at least Marcus doesn't burn dinner." It didn't matter that Marcus never lifted a finger in the kitchen. From that point on, I became the go-to guy when something needed to be blamed. Missed mail? Lazaro forgot. Guests late? Lazaro gave the wrong directions. Even when I wasn't in the room, I shook the memory off and entered the kitchen. As expected, the chaos was brewing. Boxes of ingredients. 2 hired staff already sweating. One turned to me and asked, "You the coordinator today?" I smiled. Apparently. At breakfast, I tried. One last time. And everyone was seated. My father reading some article on his tablet. Marcus dressed like he was about to give a TED talk. My mother sipping her detox juice. "I need to say something," I started. My father let out a sigh. "Let me guess. Another one of your startups." I kept my voice steady. "I have a meeting in Miami tomorrow. It's a contract worth more than all of this put together." Marcus laughed into his coffee. "Is this like that app where people book SUVs that never show up?" I ignored him. "I'm serious. I'm flying out tonight." My mother raised an eyebrow. "No, you're not." "I am." My father finally looked up. "Stop embarrassing yourself. Taxi drivers don't sign contracts." There it was. Again. That line. Marcus added, "Hey, if you screw this up like last year, at least order decent takeout. The meatballs were a disaster." I looked around the table. Nobody backed me up. Not even the cousins, not the in-laws. Everyone seemed to agree. I was the family's entertainment, the help, the ghost. I took a breath and said it as calmly as I could. "If you keep ignoring me like this, you're going to regret it." There was a beat of silence, then laughter. My mother chuckled and waved a hand. "Oh, Lazaro, you always were the dramatic one." My father added, "Should have sent him to acting school." I didn't respond. I left my plate untouched and walked out. Upstairs, I went into the study. It smelled like cedar and old books. I hadn't stepped foot in there in years. The walls were lined with framed photos, family trips, holidays, celebrations. I moved closer. Every photo told the same story. Marcus, centered, smiling, arms around our parents. Me, always slightly off frame. In some shots, I wasn't even there at all. Cropped out or blurry in the background. One picture stood out, a birthday party. Marcus at the front, cutting the cake. Me behind the table, clearing empty plates. Like I'd never been a son, just a stand-in, a placeholder. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it from my pocket, expecting another passive-aggressive reminder, but it wasn't. Private message from assistant to CEO, Pinnacle Corp. Excited to finally meet you tomorrow, Mr. Lazaro. This deal could redefine the industry. I stared at the screen, then at the photo in front of me. Then, back at the screen, I whispered to myself, they think I'm a ghost. Tomorrow, they'll know who I am. Betrayals. I stayed in the study a little longer after that message, letting the weight of everything settle. The laughter downstairs still drifted up through the old vents, loud, shallow, hollow. I stepped away from the framed photos, tucked my phone back in my jacket, and walked out of the room. Downstairs, the air had changed. The scent of roasted meat, cinnamon, and too much perfume blended into something oddly suffocating. Outside, more cars were pulling up the long driveway. Audis, Teslas, even a vintage Bentley someone must have rented just to impress. The kind of guests my family bent over backwards for. The front of the house sparkled, garlands and icicle lights strung with military precision. I watched my mother glide from guest to guest, dressed in a deep emerald gown, wine glass in hand, voice turned up just enough to be heard from across the room. "Oh, Marcus. He's leading another campaign with that big celebrity brand next quarter. We're so proud." Then she saw me. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes cooled 2 degrees. "And this is Lazaro. He helps out around the house when he visits." The guest, a tall man in a camel coat, tilted his head politely and offered a handshake. I returned it, but barely. He asked, "So, what do you do?" I opened my mouth, ready to speak, but my father was suddenly there, drink in hand, grin already forming. "He drives Uber. Keeps him out of trouble." Laughter. Not cruel, not loud. Just dismissive. The kind that lands like a slap only you feel. I nodded and walked away. In the kitchen, I found a slice of quiet, steam fogging up the windows, silver trays lined on counters, heat pouring from the oven. My mother followed. "You're being cold," she said, pulling a tray toward her. "These people notice that." I turned toward her. "I told you. I have something important tomorrow. Something real. Can you stop treating me like a joke?" She didn't blink. "Don't start this now. I'm serious. And I'm exhausted," she snapped. "Do you know how much Marcus has riding on tonight? He's been working non-stop, and you... What? You fly in, do nothing, and expect us to rearrange our lives for you?" I lowered my voice. "I'm not here to be your waiter." She leaned closer, her tone turning venomous. "Don't humiliate this family. Marcus is our future. You're nothing but noise." I felt something cold settle in my gut. "Keep treating me like this," I said, "and I promise, tonight's the last time you'll regret it." She slammed the oven shut. "You won't do anything," she said. "You never do." Guests began to file into the dining room. Someone dimmed the lights. Candles flickered on the long table, each place setting polished, aligned. A photo of Marcus giving a speech at some gala sat in a frame near the centerpiece. I wasn't at that event. I hadn't been invited. Marcus stood up and raised his glass. "Thank you all for being here. This has been a big year, and next year we're expanding. More clients, more campaigns, maybe even our own boutique agency." Applause. I poured wine into glasses, moving along the side like a server. I was handed coats, asked to fetch napkins. No one questioned it. I'd been doing it for so long it had become my role by default. As I reached the end of the table, I heard her voice again. My mother, speaking softly to a woman in pearls. "Honestly, he's only useful in the kitchen. If he'd just stay out of Marcus's way, everything would be fine." The wine bottle paused in my hand. I didn't turn around. I didn't respond. I walked back to the kitchen, set the bottle down, leaned against the counter, and closed my eyes. Then, Buzz. I reached into my pocket. A text. Airline reminder. Your flight to Miami departs in 4 hours. Check in now. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered. My hand tightened around the phone. His hand tightened around the phone, the screen still glowing with the flight reminder. The faint ping of cutlery, laughter, and the murmur of wine-soaked conversation drifted in from the dining room like background static. But in that moment, it was all just noise. I slipped the phone into my jacket pocket and leaned back against the kitchen wall, letting my head rest against the cabinets. The same kitchen I'd grown up in, where I learned to make boxed mac and cheese, where my dad had once made pancakes in funny shapes for Marcus, never for me. The voices from the dining room rose again. Another toast, another joke, probably about me. I'd heard it all before. Thanksgiving 3 years ago, Marcus giving a speech in front of 20 guests while I washed the dishes. No one said thank you. I remember my hands pruning from the hot water and Marcus waving to the room like a local celebrity as my mother whispered to a friend, "He's always been the star." My old bedroom, the one with the navy blue wallpaper and the baseball decals, had been gutted and turned into Marcus's remote office during the pandemic. When I came home that year, my things were shoved into a box in the attic. No one asked me, no one even thought to tell me. I stepped out of the kitchen and walked toward the front hallway. My shoes were still damp from the snow earlier, leaving faint marks on the hardwood. I paused by the coat closet, cracked the door, and glanced inside. My carry-on suitcase was still tucked behind the winter coats right where I'd stashed it when I arrived. Just seeing it reminded me I wasn't staying. Not this time. Then, doubt crept in. What if I did stay? What if I helped tonight, kept my mouth shut, played along one more time? Would it really matter? I could hear my father's voice in my head again, smirking. The invisible son. That's what you are, Lazaro. Reliable in the background. I took a breath, ready to shut the closet, and maybe the whole idea. When my phone buzzed again, I pulled it out. Chen confirmed. 9 a.m. sharp. No delays, 9 numbers on the line. Your presence seals the deal. Jordan. I read it twice. Chen, the CEO of Pinnacle. The man my brother had been boasting about all week. He was expecting me. Not Marcus, not the golden child. My pulse picked up. I straightened up, closed the closet door quietly, and walked back into the dining room. The air was thick with expensive perfume, candle wax, and roasted lamb. Everyone was seated now, glasses raised. Marcus stood at the head of the table, holding court like a prince. I just wanted to thank you all, he began, glass in hand. It's been an incredible year. Next year will be even bigger. We've been in talks with Pinnacle Corp. Huge clients. Global campaigns. You'll see our work everywhere. Polite applause followed. I froze in place. Pinnacle? I catered their corporate retreat 6 months ago. I met with Chen in person. He'd asked to work with me directly this time. Marcus didn't know. Clearly, I didn't move, I didn't speak. But something in me shifted. After the applause died down, I slipped out through the side hallway and found my father standing near the staircase fiddling with a bottle of scotch. I approached him, calm, steady. I'm done, I said, voice low but firm. I'm not your servant. He didn't look at me at first, just poured himself a drink and took a slow sip. Then, without turning, he muttered, CEO, you're just a taxi driver. Don't embarrass us. I took 2 steps closer, close enough to smell the scotch on his breath, close enough to see the fine lines deepen around his eyes. You're going to regret the way you've treated me. He scoffed, finally turning toward me. You always say that, but here you are, still setting the table. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned, walked quietly back to the coat closet, opened it, and reached behind the heavy wool jackets. My hand landed on the suitcase handle. I gripped it tight. This time, I wasn't bluffing. I whispered to myself, barely audible, but with every ounce of conviction I had left. Tonight, I choose me. The suitcase wheels thudded softly over the brick path as I crossed the back patio, breath rising in quick clouds. The winter air was sharp and dry, biting at my cheeks, reminding me with every step. This was real. I was leaving. I reached the driveway, paused in the shadow of a pine tree, and glanced back once. Through the frosted kitchen window, I could see silhouettes. Figures laughing, heads tilting, wine glasses raised. Not a single one noticed I was gone. And even if they did, I knew exactly what they'd say. Oh, Lazaro's probably out walking the dog, or clearing snow. Just another chore boy in their minds. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't want to answer, but some part of me knew who it was before I even saw the screen. Mom. I swiped to answer, keeping the phone low. Her voice came sharp, fast, as if it had been boiling just beneath the surface all night. If you walk away now, don't bother coming back. Do you understand me? You will destroy this family's name after everything we've built. I cut her off. The name was never mine to begin with. Silence on her end. Then I hit end call. It was the first time in my life I'd hung up on her. I slipped the phone into my pocket and raised my hand. A yellow cab had just turned onto the street, one of the few still running on Christmas Eve. I waved it down, and the driver nodded, pulling up beside the curb. He stepped out, grabbed my suitcase, tossed it into the trunk. Headed to JFK? Yeah, I said. Red eye. He nodded again. You're lucky. Weather's supposed to turn nasty by morning. As I settled into the back seat, warmth hit me like a wave. The soft hum of the heater, the faint jazz playing on the radio. It was the most peace I'd felt in days. I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror, lights twinkling like nothing had changed, but I had. As the cab rolled through Greenwich's winding streets, I couldn't help but think about the irony. And all those times they laughed, saying I'd never be more than a driver. And now, here I was, being driven to a future none of them believed I could build. I stared out the window, watching snow begin to fall in slow, drifting flakes. They used to say it like a curse. You'll never amount to anything. You're not like Marcus. You're the help, Lazaro. But tonight, those words lost their weight. They weren't mine to carry anymore. Another buzz. Text message. Marcus, Mom says if you don't turn around, I'll lose my Pinnacle contract. Do you want to ruin me too? I stared at the screen. I thought about all the times he let me take the fall, about the retreat I organized for Pinnacle, how he tried to take credit when I did all the work. I thought about how he watched me scrub dishes last Thanksgiving while he toasted champagne. Then I typed back, you never minded ruining me. And hit delete. Not send, just delete. Some things didn't need answers. The car merged onto I-95. JFK was still a ways off, but the road was clear. Traffic light. Everyone else was home with family. I wasn't sure if that thought stung or soothed me. Then the phone rang again. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang a second time. This time, I picked up. His voice was calm, too calm. Lazaro, you've made your point. Come back before this becomes permanent. Don't humiliate us. Stay where you belong. I could hear the warning behind the words. Not rage, something colder, something final. I am, I said. He hesitated. You are what? I am staying where I belong. You just don't get to define that anymore. I ended the call, and that was it. The last tie cut. By the time we pulled up to JFK, snow had picked up. The wind whipped through the drop-off lanes. I thanked the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and rolled it toward Terminal 5. Inside, the airport buzzed with soft announcements and weary travelers. I moved through security on autopilot. Jacket off, laptop out, belt unbuckled, shoes slipped off. Same routine I'd done 100 times, but tonight, it felt different. I reached the gate with 20 minutes to spare, found an empty seat by the window, stared at the runway, where a plane's lights blinked steady in the darkness. My hands trembled slightly as I opened my laptop. The screen came to life. There it was, Pinnacle contract, draft 3:09 a.m. Meeting with CEO Chen, final signature, Lazaro R. DeSantis, Chief Executive Officer. I read my name twice, and then once more. This was real. No matter what they said, no matter how they'd treated me, I was a CEO. I was building something of my own. And tomorrow, the man they were all desperate to impress would shake my hand and call me boss. As the boarding call echoed through the terminal, I rose. I looked at the screen one last time and whispered, tomorrow, they'll finally see who I really am. As the plane taxied toward the runway, I let those words settle into my chest like a promise. The soft vibration beneath my seat, the rumble of jet engines gaining power. It all felt like motion in more ways than one. Just before liftoff, my phone buzzed again. An unknown caller. I stared at it for a second, ignored it. The phone slipped back into my pocket as the nose of the plane lifted, tilting us up into the sky, away from Greenwich, Away from the shadows I was no longer willing to shrink under. Back at the mansion, the scene was quite different. Guests in tailored tuxedos and shimmering dresses filled the foyer, their smiles painted on, polite and expectant. The smell of fresh pine mingled with perfume and champagne. But something was missing: warm food. From the grand staircase, my mother's heels clicked furiously as she descended, face tight behind forced charm. The kitchen was empty, the oven off, the counters untouched. She scanned the room, jaw clenched. "Where is Lazaro?" she whispered through her teeth, eyes darting to the door leading outside. No signs, no noise, no prep trays, no plated hors d'oeuvres. Then the questions started. Didn't she say her son was preparing the meal? I thought he was a chef. Weren't we promised something exquisite and authentic? Each sentence chipped away at the mask of perfection she had so carefully arranged. Her cheeks flushed, not from wine, but from humiliation. She stormed toward Marcus, who stood in the corner laughing with a group of junior execs. "Do something," she snapped under her breath. He blinked. "Like what?" "Order food. Anything." At 8:03 p.m., Marcus placed a desperate call. 25 minutes later, 3 snow-covered delivery drivers stumbled up the front steps carrying stacked boxes of greasy pepperoni pizza. The gold-plated serving trays had already been laid out in anticipation. He simply dropped the slices on top like an absurd buffet. The guests tried to remain gracious, but the mood had shifted. The Pinnacle Court. Reps exchanged glances. Victoria Chen, elegant, restrained, unreadable, stood near the fireplace holding a napkin to her mouth. She offered a quiet smile, then leaned toward my mother. "Apologies, we have an early morning flight. Thank you for the invitation." She was out the door before dessert. Meanwhile, I was 30,000 feet in the air, leaning back in a thin leather seat, sipping from a plastic cup of water. No luxury, but peace. I pictured them in that dining room, passing out paper plates and faking smiles. The image didn't make me laugh. It didn't make me feel vindicated. It just felt free. For the first time, I wasn't part of the performance. I opened my laptop again, checked the agenda, read over the pitch one more time. The numbers still made my stomach flutter. $9 million. 9 million reasons I didn't need their approval anymore. Back at the house, Marcus stood near the entryway, trying to salvage the evening with charm and quick pitches. "So, as I was saying, our PR model is built around authenticity, and..." One of the Pinnacle advisors cut him off mid-sentence. "If you can't manage a holiday dinner without a meltdown, how exactly are you going to manage a nationwide rollout?" The table laughed. Not with him. At him. My mother's face paled. By 10:15, most of the guests had left. Empty wine glasses littered the tables. A half-eaten box of pizza sat beneath a silver dome. Silence stretched in every corner of that once impressive mansion. Then came the crash. A stemmed wine glass shattered against the marble fireplace. "He's ruined us!" my mother screamed, her voice bouncing off the vaulted ceiling. Marcus sat slumped on the velvet couch, scrolling his phone, eyes wide. "No response," he muttered. Then, thumbs moving fast, he typed, "Marcus, you'll regret this." He hit send. But I didn't see the message. I was already asleep somewhere over Georgia, flying toward the life they never believed I could build. That "you'll regret this." That text from Marcus was the last thing I saw before I powered my phone down somewhere over the Carolinas. When the wheels hit the tarmac in Miami, the morning sun was already high, painting the city in warm gold. The airport buzzed with holiday travelers, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. I turned my phone back on. 22 missed calls, 14 voicemails, dozens of texts. Mom, Marcus, even my father. Some messages were frantic. "We can fix this if you turn back now." Some were angry. "You embarrassed us in front of people who mattered." One, from Marcus, was practically begging, "The contract's gone. Pinnacle walked. Please, don't do this to me." And yet, even in their pleas, not one message said, "We're proud of you." I silenced the phone, slipped it into my inside jacket pocket, and stepped into the warm, humid air of Miami with my suitcase rolling quietly behind me. By 9 a.m., I stood outside the resort conference room, overlooking a line of palms and infinity pools. Inside, the Pinnacle team was gathering. I took a breath, straightened my collar, and walked in. The room was sleek, glass walls, polished wood table, chrome fixtures, a table lined with sharp eyes and power suits. Everyone rose as Victoria Chen entered, poised and unreadable as ever. She nodded toward me. Lazaro. I returned the nod. Victoria. We took our seats. A light rustle of papers, coffee cups, clicks of pens. Before we begin, Victoria said smoothly, I want to share a quick anecdote. I spent Christmas Eve at a rather interesting event in Connecticut. Murmurs and chuckles. The hosts spoke highly of their eldest son. Well, of the son they claimed was hosting the dinner. But things quickly fell apart. Cold oven, pizza boxes, quite the contrast. She glanced at me, eyes narrowed just slightly. Funny coincidence, she continued. Your last name is also Rivera, isn't it? The room went quiet. I met her gaze, didn't flinch. Yes, that was my family. Another ripple across the table. A few executives shifted in their chairs, waiting to see how I'd spin it. I didn't spin anything. I wasn't there, I said plainly. They expected me to play the servant again. I chose to walk away. And for the first time, they had to host without someone to blame when it all fell apart. Silence. Then I added, they called me the disappointment, the taxi driver, but the company you're about to partner with, I built it. On my own. No loans, no handouts, no help. Victoria tapped her tablet, turned it to face the table. On the screen, a Forbes cover, my photo. The headline read, From Invisible to Invaluable, The Rise of Lazaro Rivera. Applause broke out, not wild, but solid. The kind of clap that came with respect. Before I could exhale, the boardroom doors burst open. Marcus. Disheveled, red-eyed, waving a folder of printed screenshots like a madman. This is who you're signing with? He barked. He's a fraud. He was a driver, a literal Uber driver. He lied. Security moved, but Victoria held up a hand. Marcus slammed the folder down on the table. He's not who he says he is. He didn't go to college. He catered events. He was nobody. I stood, calm, steady, opened my briefcase. One by one, I laid the facts on the table. Tax returns, signed contracts, employee rosters, client feedback, licensing certifications, the names of investors, the milestones. Everything. I looked Marcus in the eye. You spent your life selling stories. I built something real. Victoria didn't even glance at him as she signed the final page of our contract. Then, as if brushing lint off her sleeve, she said, Mr. Rivera, Marcus, is it? We don't work with people who try to sabotage family in public boardrooms. Your PR proposal is withdrawn. Security stepped forward. Marcus didn't argue. He just stood there, the color draining from his face, defeated. The camera flashes began almost instantly, reporters capturing the moment. My handshake with Victoria, the Pinnacle banner in the background, my company name right beneath theirs. For the first time, my name stood alone. No footnotes, no asterisks, no one behind me whispering, don't embarrass us. As the room began to clear, I checked my phone, a single message from my father. Come home. We need to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. No reply. Then softly, almost to myself, I said, now they see me. But it's too late. I stared at that message from my father for a few more seconds, then locked the screen and set the phone face down beside the paperwork I was reviewing. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. 3 weeks passed. No more late-night texts. No voicemails pleading for me to think about the family. Not even a token apology. Just silence. Until this morning, when a formal envelope arrived at my office, no return address, just a printed card inside. Come by Sunday. Your mother is making dinner. I didn't answer it. I just got in the car and drove. The drive to Greenwich felt different this time. I wasn't rushing, heart pounding, dreading the cold reception. I took my time. Rolled the window down a little. Let the cold wind brush past my face. There was no reason to hurry. When I pulled into the familiar circular driveway, the house looked the same, but it felt smaller. The doors creaked when I pushed them open. The grand chandelier was dimmer than I remembered. Furniture that once gleamed with polish now wore a dull film. No staff, no laughter, just quiet. My footsteps echoed down the hall. Mom was in the kitchen, turning a spoon in a pot that wasn't even warm. She didn't look up when I entered, just kept stirring. "You made us look like fools," she said without turning around. I didn't respond. She set the spoon down, finally facing me. Her eyes were tired, but not sad, just calculating. "But you did it," she said softly. "The world thinks you're somebody now." I tilted my head. "Do you?" She blinked. Her mouth opened like she might say something softer, something real. But instead she whispered, "Just don't embarrass us again." There it was. Not love, not pride, not regret. Damage control. Dad walked in from the back, his usual stiff gait now a bit slower. "You didn't have to make it public," he muttered. "You could have succeeded quietly." "You mean invisibly," I replied. He didn't deny it, just folded his arms, jaw clenched like he was chewing on the words he couldn't spit out. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the old pocket watch, and the same one he gave me when I was 18, already cracked even then. "You said this would remind me of who I was." I set it gently on the table between us. "Well," I said, I remember. I remember exactly who I was in this house." Their silence was louder than any shouting could have been. I pulled out a sealed envelope from my briefcase and placed it beside the watch. Inside, copies of the $9 million contract with Pinnacle. News articles, financial statements, the kind of evidence no one could spin. On the front, I'd written, "You never believed in me. That was your mistake, not mine." I turned to leave. "Lazaro," my mother said, her voice finally soft. I paused at the door, but didn't turn around. "We still don't understand you," she added. "I know," I said. "That's what finally makes sense." It was nearly dusk when I arrived back at my own home. Not a mansion, not a palace, just a warm place where I belonged. In my office, I placed the cracked glass from the pocket watch on the corner of my desk, not out of bitterness, but as a quiet reminder, not of what they took from me, but of what I rebuilt with my own hands. Another contract waited on my desk. I reviewed it with ease, signed it with confidence. I wasn't the invisible son anymore. I wasn't the family's shadow. I was my own man. And finally, that was enough.